My name is Aaron Seal. I am the youngest son of Barry Seal. I was 9 years old at the time of my father's death. My father was a different person and personality to just about everyone in his life. He could be all things to all people, and he used that to his advantage when he needed to, but that was also part of who he was. I remember him as a very funny man, a very loving and doting father, a man that would give you the shirt off his back. He was a great pilot, and everyone that I've ever spoken to, they said he was the best. I've heard stories that, from when he was a kid that his mother had told, that when he was a very young child, he had got up on the roof with an umbrella of their home and jumped off with it because he said he wanted to fly. He would learn to fly at 15 years old. I had his pilot's license, I believe, by 16. He just was a natural, it just came natural to him. I just remember always being around helicopters and airplanes. I can remember times as a kid, we were flying over the Bermuda Triangle, going to the Bahamas, and we would learn about it in school, so the kids were talking about the Bermuda Triangle. Well, all of a sudden we get over the Bermuda Triangle, my dad lets us know. Well, then the plane engine shut off and won't start back. We start getting worried, and then he starts the engine back. That's something he would do a lot with us. He got to where we were used to it. We'd say, "No, Dad, we know you're gonna start it back." He would turn the plane upside down and do barrel rolls with us as kids, and we just got used to that kind of thing. It was standard operating procedure. One day we were at a field trip at the elementary school. Across the street there, a vacant lot where my father was gonna take people on helicopter rides. And the kids had to sign a release form. Only about half the kids in the school, parents allowed them to because for whatever reason they didn't want their children in the helicopter with Barry Seal, but a lot of kids were able to. And what he did was he would just take the helicopter straight up and down. So it was almost like a roller coaster ride. He'd just go straight up in there and down real quickly. And the kids loved it. And when I was young, I thought everybody's father was a pilot. I didn't know, I didn't realize we were wealthy. I didn't realize we were as different as we were. And maybe that was one of the days that I started to realize, well, yeah, not everybody's father is a helicopter pilot and an airplane pilot. And I started to realize there was something different going on, though I wasn't quite sure what it was. My father was very generous. I can remember hearing stories at his funeral of people coming up to my mother that some people she knew, some people she didn't know, saying, I just wanted to tell you, I didn't have the money to put my kids through college, and Barry came and gave me the money to put my kids through college. Or a gentleman saying, my business was failing, and Barry gave me $50,000 to save my business and wouldn't take payment back for it. Those kinds of things. He was very giving and a very loving man, but then he had this side to him to where, he wanted to be the one doing the giving. He would obtain the means to give however he had to. He was never violent or anything like that, but he did it in his way, allegedly smuggling cocaine. My fondest memory of Mina was one day I was homesick from school. My father was going up to Mina for the day, so I flew up there with him on the Fat Lady, which was the term of endearment for the C-123. But we flew up there on that plane because he was having it filmed for some news footage. Had a news camera taking video in the plane, taking off from the Mina airport. So I made myself scarce and went and played with a pack of wild dogs that I found. I asked my father for some money for the vending machine because the dogs were so hungry, so I'm eating bugs off the ground. So he gave me a bunch of money and I fed the dogs. When I ran out, all the dogs left but one. So I wanted to bring her home with me. I named her Tailspin that day because her tail spun in a circle. And so I asked my dad, could I take her home? And he said, of course. Well, we weren't flying home on the cargo plane, we were flying home on my father's Learjet, which at the time was the best of the best planes, And I heard the gentleman saying, Barry, are you really gonna let your son bring that mangy, dirty, wild dog on the plane? He said, yeah, if Aaron wants a dog, he gets the dog. When my father was still alive, I was seeing hints, as I've mentioned, that we weren't the typical Joneses down the street because of money and influence and aviation things and all that kind of stuff. But I didn't fully know exactly what my father had gotten into until he was killed. I knew things were wrong, but I didn't know what. And after he was killed, a day or two later, family was at my house, my mom's family and stuff, and comforting all of us, and came on the news where they talked about him being a drug smuggler that was killed. And I can remember turning to my mom and I said, Mom, is that true what they're saying about Dad? And she said, yeah, Aaron, it is. A lot of people have asked me over the years, did I think more of him, less of him? And it didn't change what I thought of him. He was my father, and he always will be. And whether he was President of the United States, whether he was, some people say a CIA agent, some people, alleged drug smoke, whatever, he's still my father, and that doesn't change. I think he was a very brave man. I think he was, he's still my hero to this day and always will be. My father picked out the epitaph for his gravestone, quote he had read somewhere, and gave it to my mother not long before he was killed, and said, if they kill me, Debbie, this is what I want on my gravestone. The epitaph says, "A rebel adventurer, the likes of whom in previous days made America great."